In a poll for the mega cities that are worst and best for women, Cairo has been named the most dangerous and London the best. Take a look at this report.
London. I feel like it's a very inclusive city.
Opportunities, loads of opportunities.
Like with the healthcare, there's a lot of opportunities that you can get a lot of things, a lot of free things also for women.
They should work on the women empowerment because not all women have to get married.
Words, verbal abuse or verbal harassment, basically.
It's really bad, You feel like you're not a human being. You're like a weird creature, You're just walking and you hear something you should not hear in the street. Why?
And the Economist Safe City Index 2017 has ranked Japan's Tokyo as the safest city for women in the world. Indian cities like Delhi and Mumbai are ranked 43rd and 45th respectively of the 10 cities which are at the bottom of the index. In fact, 2 are in South Asia. Bangladesh's capital Dhaka is placed at 58 and Pakistan's Karachi is ranked 60, which makes it the worst place for women in the world. But according to the survey results, 3 Southeast Asian cities, Manila, Ho Chi Minh City and Jakarta, have not performed well. They are ranked 55, 56 and 57 respectively. The survey also lists Cairo and Tehran in the table, when Cairo has been placed at 51 and Tehran at 52. And to take our discussion forward, we're joined by Lalita Kumar Mangalam. She's a chairperson of National Commission for Women. Also, Manisha Shastri. She's an assistant editor for The Citizens. Let me begin by asking you, Ms. Kumar Mangalam. The report highlights a sharp divide in overall levels of safety between the fast and rising developing world and the stagnant developed world. To what extent would you agree with that?
I think to a certain extent I would agree. If you look at issues like environmental concern, environmental safety, especially in terms of, if we take Delhi, for example, we have a very bad environmental fear that, the environment here is very bad for anybody, especially when it comes to breathing, etc. If you're talking about safety, especially physical safety, then I would agree with the report totally, because physical safety is a major problem in most developing countries, whether in Africa or Asia or South America, etc. And in the developed world, physical safety is generally far better than it is in the so-called developing world. Well, if you want to talk about health, education, those are other questions. But health and education also have an effect on if you're talking about overall safety. But generally, if you want to talk just about the environment and physical safety, then I think that, yes, I would agree with the report.
Ms. Kumar Mangalam, in the developed world also, more cities are devoting resources to digital security. Do you think India needs to do more in the digital space to ensure women's safety from trolls to sometimes even serious threats, perhaps?
I think India can do only what it can within the law. The internet is a huge, vast, living organism, literally. And I don't think any country beyond a point is able to protect anybody, whether it's children or the internet. Children or women or anybody from a vulnerable community, say old people, for example, from a certain amount of, torture or whatever you want, again, there are different words you could use, or a lack of safety because of how the internet is used. And ours is a democracy, so in many ways the hands of any government is tied. Because the moment you block sites, the moment you say, for example, you don't want pornography, right? There'll be a huge outcry on freedom of speech, freedom of choice, etc., etc. So I think insofar as India is concerned, and maybe most other developing countries which are democratic countries, you'll find there are problems in actually trying to police, for want of a better word, or controlled the internet or access to it. China is not a democracy.
Also going across to Manisha Shastri, who's also joining us on the program to discuss more on this. Manisha, basic safety is a top concern for women in public spaces across the world. The statistics, in fact, say it all. And more than 83% of Egyptian women who have been sexually harassed on Cairo streets. And then a rape is reported every 29 minutes in New Delhi. Only 12% of women, in fact, in Peru's capital, Lima, feel safe in the city. And these are statistics according to United Nations. So the question really is, are we doing enough? If yes, then why are women still unsafe? And if not, then what more needs to be done?
In my opinion, I think a lot of our conversation around women's safety is centered around creating infrastructure and these safe spaces. But what we really need to look at is in terms of how we really need to go back and culturally and historically analyze how women have been looked at, A. And B, we need to understand psychopathology, because it's not that men are born this way thinking that, okay, women are inferior and that let's create spaces that are unsafe to them. It's a certain kind of conditioning that takes place. So we have to dig deeper and not just limit ourselves to looking at, okay, let's use technology to do this or let's light up our streets. There is something deeper at the heart of the issue of women's safety, which is social conditioning that lies there. And we need to understand issues of psychopathology in terms of how does power work. Historically, you've seen women, how they've always been, for war, they have been prized or they have always been slaves. So this equation of power, of how women are looked at as an inferior species or are looked upon as, not second-class citizens. I think we need to look at these ideas in a very sociological manner. These need to be deconstructed and then understood in order to move towards women's safety. It is not enough to just have digital safety or to create infrastructure or light up streets. There is a sociological aspect to this. There is a psychopathological aspect to this, and that is something that needs to be looked into.
Absolutely agree with you on that. And also the good news is that cities around the world have made progress incorporating the needs of both genders in infrastructure planning. But this has not yet been institutionalized everywhere. Do you think we need a better understanding of how women and men experience and use their public spaces? Perhaps also incorporate more planning there?
Definitely. So I think one of the best examples that I can give you in terms of my own life is, say a lot of people ask me why I don't use cabs. I use an auto because it's easier to jump out of an auto. That's how we experience the world. We make life choices based on safety. So clearly the way men and women experience the world is very, very different. A walk on the road for a man and a woman is very, very different. And we have to start acknowledging this. And men also need to start acknowledging this. There are a lot of men who support the idea of, women being safe and respecting women. But this difference of experience in how we understand the world, how we perceive the world needs to be acknowledged and worked upon. So your policies that involve women have to be based on women's experience and have to be driven by women's voices. It cannot be a bunch of men sitting and deciding what policy for women is going to be.
Absolutely agree with you there on that particular point as well. Thank you, Manisha and Ms. Kumar Mangalam, also for joining us on the program.